Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chain.
Hey, I'm Adam Chain.
And I'm Shoshana Chain, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 497, The Truth About Having IBS with Josh Dech.
In this episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we talk with Josh Dech about having IBS and whether or not it is real. We explore the world of healing and ask the question, is IBS really as it seems? And we break down the differences between IBS, IBD, Crohn's, and colitis in easy to understand terms. We discuss why IBS is so common and why some doctors believe conditions like Crohn's and colitis cannot be reversed. Join us as we navigate this journey and find out where to start on the road to better health.
Josh is an ex-paramedic and holistic nutritionist, specializing in irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's and colitis, and other related gut issues. It was the successes his clients have had with complex digestive diseases, previously thought to be impossible to fix, that got him connected to some of the world's most renowned doctors. Since then, he's been recruited to the Priority Health Academy as a medical lecturer, helping educate doctors on the holistic approach to gut health and inflammatory bowel disease. Enjoy the show.
Hey guys, guess what? I have a new book coming soon. It's called I Am a Courageous Cub. So for those of you that gave me support with I Am a Peaceful Goldfish, thank you so much. You can get I Am a Courageous Cub right now by pre-ordering it on Amazon or checking out the link in our show notes at planttrainers.com.
And now for a moment of gratitude.
I'm grateful for the sun shining through the window and the warmth that I feel on my shoulders from it.
I'm grateful for the summer quickly approaching, and that means some more travels. So very exciting.
Josh Dech, thank you so much for joining us on the Plant Trainers Podcast today.
Shoshana, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about this. And I didn't know Adam was coming on, so it's a double for double.
Here I am.
It's usually a duo. There's only been a couple of episodes lately where we've had to divide and conquer just because life is busy, but otherwise almost 500 podcasts we've done together. Yeah.
It's so funny because I listened to probably two of them. And as I kind of zipped through, I'll put it on 1.5x. It's how my body or my brain retains
That's
stuff.
how I work too, yeah.
And I don't remember Adam. Not that he's unmemorable. I just,
I'm usually quiet. I'm the quiet one who goes to the background work, but I'm here.
Yeah, but he has missed a few, so that could be why. That could be why too. But
insurmountable odds. But glad you're both here. Good to meet you again, Adam.
Let's do it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm grateful he's here. I'm grateful he does all the background work. Trust me. But we want to know what your moment of gratitude is for the day.
You know what? I think it's one of those things where we also, I love what I do and I'm so grateful I get to do this every day. And it might sound sort of overplayed at this point, but really, truly, I was thinking about this just yesterday. And I really am so blessed to do what I do. I love doing what I do. We have people coming in of all ages who've had their lives taken from them because of gut disease. We've had little kids who are so sore and so inflamed they limp around the house and can't go play outside because they're having accidents every 20 minutes. And we get to give them their lives back. They get to go to the playground and be kids. And it is such an unbelievable blessing to be able to be a part of that.
It really is. And, we see that with our own clients too. People walking, people being able to travel, even somebody being able to, I'll say zipper or bra strap or whatever it is, people being able to get those fine motor or those smaller gross motor skills back because they're in debilitating pain or whatever it is. We take such small things for granted when we're healthy or considerably healthy. So to think about how that's life-changing for some of our clients to be able to have some of those small steps back, it's really huge.
Yeah, sometimes the little things to us. And, I was talking about this with a colleague of mine, and we just say sometimes, like, I'm just doing my job. I don't know what the big deal is, but it's literally make or break. It is everything for them. And it's just amazing to be able to do.
Definitely. So what brought you to being able to do this? Like, what got you interested in health and healing in the first place?
You know what? It's always been something. I believe we're all born for a purpose. And I just think I found mine early. I remember being as young as 6 years old. We had a golden retriever. She went in, they got her fixed and her stitches opened up. And I remember being in there right away with the gauze and putting stuff on and managing this bloody emergency at 6. And my first career, oddly enough, was as a paramedic. And so it just was a natural transition almost. And I loved it. I loved doing that and working on that side of healthcare. But I realized realistically, as I got into it more and more, it was sick care. You're taking care of sick people and shuttling them back and forth where they go to the hospital to get more meds for the same things, come back home, continue being sick, and no one got better. And so I say it's really a matter of falling forward, kind of a happy accident where I moved to my next career, personal training, where I just fell in love with proactive healthcare. We had a woman who was 57 years old, came to see me for the first time. Her name was Lynn, one of my very first clients in my early 20s. And she was on 17 pills and a shot of insulin for breakfast, 9 more pills and a shot of insulin for bedtime. She was on the disability list at work. She had high blood pressure, slept with a CPAP machine. It took us all but 2 years, which in the grand scheme of what this age now, 59, is nothing. It's a fraction of time in her life. Took us 2 years. She was off all but 2 medications, no more CPAP, no longer on disability, and she ended up breaking a world record as a weightlifter in the Raw Powerlifting Federation here in Canada. And that just showed me the power of the human body. So I fell in love, started diving in, went back to school, became a nutritionist, and it's a whole story around that one as well. I could get into that. It's a whole podcast by itself. But the idea being, I fell in love with this based on the need, people needing more help and nobody filling that. And it was just such a blessing to be able to be part of that. Like I said, to give people their lives back where no one else could. We're able to do that in this space, which is now Crohn's and colitis, the supposedly irreversible disease we can turn around inside of 12 to 16 weeks.
There's a lot of people that need the help, but there's a lot of those people that need the help that don't actually want the help. So the people that you deal with, are they coming to you because they're ready for the help, or are they people that need the help and need a little bit of convincing that they want it as well?
It's a little bit of both. You know, I've also studied business and marketing for a long time. There's really 3 types of buyers. There's the one type who doesn't know you and is not ready to do it. And it's a whole spectrum. There's the next type, though, who's ready and kind of looking, but doesn't know you exist. And then there's a type of buyer who knows you, who likes you, who's ready to get help, and they're ready right now. And so we can kind of work with that 50% to the end of the spectrum. The challenge is there's a lot of people out there. And I mean, like, we are breaking ground on this. We are talking with some of the world's most famous doctors and professionals, really big names in this industry. And still, they're like, it just can't be done because my doctor told me this. And so there will always be that. But our job is to simply be here and say, look, here's what's happening. The fact that it can be done, you're seeing people do it, should be enough to at least open your eyes to inquire. And so I realized a long time ago, I can't make people. You know, my grandfather used to say, you can bring a horse to water, but remember what a wet horse smells like. And so they're always very difficult to work with. But the people we work with from a business side, we say we are here to help those dealing with severe gut disease, either severe IBS or Crohn's and colitis, who are actively looking for help and are not getting the results they want from their doctor and medication. That's who we help. And we can help them reverse this thing.
Amazing. And for those who are ready, let's go. So I want to talk first about the difference between the words IBS. What is Crohn's? What is colitis? Talk to us a little bit about the differences and the overlaps.
Sure. I think a great place to start to sort of anchor this next part of the conversation is to say this. A diagnosis is just a word that medical clinicians and professionals can use in one snapshot to identify everything going on within 80 to 90% accuracy. Oh, you have IBS? Okay, I know your symptoms right off the hop. What have you tried? What have you not? So it's just a defining word. But it doesn't actually mean anything. Oftentimes we look to a diagnosis and say, well, okay, I have this thing. I have this issue. Now I have answers. Now I have an explanation. At least there's hope. At least my doctor can do something. But the reality is every symptom you have is a byproduct of dysfunction. And your body is screaming at you saying, try to help me. By getting a diagnosis, we go to our doctor and we get medication, which puts tape over the mouth. And so it's still screaming. We just can't hear it. It doesn't mean we fixed it. You got a hostage in your home. Your body's being held hostage. You put tape over the mouth. They stop screaming. Doesn't mean it wants to be there. We have to fix the body and fix the symptoms. And that's what a diagnosis is. It's just a term describing your symptoms so we can medicate and hold your body hostage. And so to differentiate the diagnosis of IBS and IBD, this is where we sort of break the mold on gut disease and gut understanding. Because in the Western world, it's a bit of a Venn diagram. They say, well, they're same, but very different diseases, different processes, different everything. Therefore, let's classify them different. They spent 40 years trying to separate these with very little regard and success, in my opinion. It's just certain markers that differentiate. So when instead I look at it and going, well, this is IBS, this is IBD, it's a spectrum of severity. So in IBS, the low end of the spectrum, it's irritable bowel syndrome, where you're experiencing irritation in the bowel. Maybe you have some constipation, low grade. You're only pooping once a day or every 2 or 3 days. Or maybe you've got 10 bowel movements a day with some urgency, food sensitivities. You're gurgly, you're bloaty, you're uncomfortable. You don't feel very good. Your gut's slightly disrupted. Well, let's wear and tear this a little bit more to go down the end of the severity spectrum until you have inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's and colitis. Now, colitis is exactly what it sounds like, colon-itis. It's inflammation in the colon. And Crohn's disease is anywhere mouth to anus. So you can have inflammation and ulcers in your mouth, in your small intestine, in your rectum, like wherever. And even outside, like we call them perianal, where they're actually on the butt cheeks. And so it can really affect anywhere. But they're all along the spectrum. So I look at it this way. If you're going for a walk and you're wearing a pair of shoes and you're not wearing socks, what happens to that heel? Eventually it rubs red and it gets a little irritated and it continues to rub red till it blisters. If you keep going, it will bleed and go right down to the bone if you allow it to. And this is the spectrum of severity from IBS, where you're just syndrome. You just got a bit of irritation now until things wear and tear and progress very quickly till you have Crohn's and colitis, till things sort of pop off. Now, again, they're different, but one often leads to the other, or one gets misdiagnosed as the other. It's a matter of how quickly or how severely we make that change. And that's sort of how we differentiate those.
Okay, so that was a lot of information, and that was excellent.
It was like a fire hose. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, no. It's great. It's fine. And everybody can go back and listen to it in whatever speed they need to listen to it. But where is the markers that people need to look for if their doctor's not figuring out what's going on for them? What do they need to ask for above and beyond, or look at themselves to understand what's really happening in their body?
I like that you brought it look up themselves, because unfortunately in a clinical side, we have so many people who are on this spectrum. The doctors go, well, it's probably IBS. We don't really know. Maybe you have some blood and some urgency. Maybe you're going 10 times a day, but it's not really colitis. So we don't know what it is because your symptoms don't fit the box of that definition of a clinical diagnosis. You don't match the terminology or the definition they need to give you the drugs, like a cookbook. And so when we talk about what someone can look into, unfortunately, go to your doctor. You'll ask for more blood work, more tests. Well, the only tests and blood work they can do and the interpretation they're able to provide, unfortunately, is again back to that language of diagnostic. It's diagnostic criteria. So can we put you in this box or not? If not, there's nothing we can do. So we have to look outside of this and understand for ourselves. We have to be advocates for ourselves, looking at the area of functional medicine to say, okay, I've got this issue right now. What are my symptoms? Because again, we're so trained to look for a diagnosis. Do my symptoms match IBS? Do my symptoms match IBD? What kind of disease do I have? We're going back to then, what can I take? And so it's, what supplements can I take to manage this? Can I use slippery elm? Can I use this herb to manage my symptoms? Well, now you've got plant-based medication. And so to bridge it for ourselves, we have to look beyond what's the diagnosis and what can I take? Rather, what is dysfunctional and how do I fix it? And this is where we can get into blood work, for example. There's something called functional blood chemistry, which doctors unfortunately won't know. You have to go to a functional diagnostic practitioner of some kind who will look at your blood labs and say, okay, based on this, it indicates these are some of the root causes of what's causing the problem. And here's how we remove it, not here's how we mask the symptoms like medication would. Here's how we get to the root and pull this thing out. And we can look at blood work and see all kinds. You can see if someone has a parasite issue by looking at their blood work. You can see if they've got some kind of candida issue by looking at their blood work. You can tell. On the other hand, what I use in my practice for Crohn's colitis is an OAT, or an organic acids test, which is a urine test, which insurance won't pay for and doctors can't interpret unless they're trained specifically in the functional side, is to look at this organic acid test. It's a urine test. We can measure 76 different markers, and it's all just exhaust, right? Cellular exhaust. If you think about muscles and working out, you produce lactic acid as a byproduct, like exhaust of muscle cells. You can feel it by getting sore. We can measure these byproducts inside your urine, byproducts of certain cells, your bacteria, fungus. We can see what we call cellular respiration, how your body's actually utilizing oxygen and nutrients like glucose or ketones, if you're familiar with the keto diet. We can see nutrient balances and deficiencies and detoxification and so much just from a urine sample. And we can utilize that with your symptoms to go back and say, okay, with a 99% certainty, based on what we know, based on the patterns and specializing in what we do.
Going to take a little break because I don't know if you are a parent, if you have a kid in your life that you love, if you know somebody who's bringing a kid into the world. My new book, I Am a Courageous Cub, is perfect because sometimes it's easy to feel discouraged, anxious, or scared. But when that happens, little kids moving their body and using their imagination can really get their confidence going, can get them trying new things, and can get them to be courageous. And you know what? I know some adults who need to be extra courageous too. So if we could get little kids practicing those skills as young ones, they'll be better at it when they're old ones. So please head over to Amazon or the link in our show notes at plantrainers.com and pre-order I Am a Courageous Cub right now. It's my second book and I'm super excited to share it with you all. Thank you so much for your support. And now back to the show.
Here is the root of what we believe is causing your issue, because inflammation isn't random. It always happens because your body is reacting, trying to heal you from something. Our job is to find out what it's healing you from, not put you in a box of diagnostic criteria to give a medication or a supplement to mask a symptom.
Right. And I love that. And quick question before I comment on it. Can they tell mold from that too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So an organic acids test does a great job typically of detecting aspergillus, which will get your common ones. Aspergillus is a mold. It's an umbrella, right? Where you have many different types of aspergillus mold, like your aflatoxins and ochratoxins and different common mold strains. But you can see aspergillus mold absolutely on a organic acid test. But there are other less common ones like ZEA and other types of mold you may not detect, but it's a great place to start. And symptomatically, we can often detect mold as well.
I love that because, you know, what we do here with the redox, and we've talked about the redox before, is the diagnosis doesn't matter, right? It is what is the symptoms and what are causing those symptoms and how do we address those symptoms? The same thing of what we do in Plant Trainers with nutrition and all of that. So while a diagnosis can help us, you know, kind of go down the path of, okay, what are other people experiencing and what has worked? It really is about the symptom, and it's about removing, when you can, removing what is triggering it, right? So are you living in mold? Is it the foods that your body's not producing the right kind of enzymes to be able to break down? Is it the amount of stress that you're experiencing? Is it something that you've absorbed or taken at some point in your life? So that's huge to understand more. If you can eliminate the trigger, you're almost halfway there.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the root cause, then there's the residual damage. And so think about going out, playing with the kids, you're outside and you're going through the forest and you get a thorn stuck through your hand. You don't think much of it, it kind of hurts, but you leave it there and you leave it for weeks or months and it starts to get infected and it's swollen. Well, right away, that's residual damage one. You have the puncture and you have the infection in the hand. Well, if you leave it long enough, you get a blood infection, your arm starts to swell. Now you're limping around with it. You got shoulder pain and neck pain. The infection's going around the body. This is residual damage. And so, yes, we do have to get to that root cause and that one thing. And your body no longer has something to inflame to. It doesn't have a reason to react to try to heal you from something. But the residual damage is also a problem we have to look at through the liver and the systems and the pancreas and your gut bacteria. Has that been imbalanced because of this? And the medications you've taken, there's so many things to do. But ultimately, we get to the root cause. And that's the thread that if you keep pulling, the whole sweater will unravel.
I feel like we hear a lot of people say that they have Crohn's and colitis. Do you know the numbers or what the stats are and how many people are really affected by these diseases?
Oh, I absolutely do. It's actually part of my entire, we'll say my pitch to my audience, say, look, guys, it can be fixed. So as per the CDC back in 1990, depends on the stats you looked at, it was an estimate of 1.5 to 3 million global cases. That's actively being seen and treated by a doctor, not who else has it or is on the spectrum of severity in its early stages, but is not yet diagnosed. So call it 1.5 to 3 million. As of 2020, the last point of data that was brought in, it was north of 7 million. Today, estimates are north of 8 million. So we've gone up 3 to 5 times the amounts of cases of inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's, colitis in just 30 years, which is shocking. And the question is here, why? Right? Because they say, well, it's autoimmune, it's unknown, it must just be genetic. Well, that is statistically impossible for genetics in 30 years to turn over for so many people to be sick unless there's a catalyst creating the genetic issue. But on the other hand, if we look at this one, Adam, we've got, right, about call it 8 million cases worldwide, give or take. We've got almost 4 million, about 3.5 million of those in a single set of population. Now, North America is less than 5% of the global population. They have that 3.5 to 4 million. So 5% of the globe has 50% of the inflammatory bowel disease, which is the worst of the worst on the spectrum. But take it back to the early stages of the spectrum. We talked about this wear and tear, right? You're healing a shoe. Up to 72% of Americans, depending on the population stats and size you look at, 60 to 72% of Americans complain of gut issues weekly. Constipation, bloating, cramping, diarrhea, pain of some kind, acid reflux, whatever it is, they're at the early stage where that heel is starting to blister. And now we have 50% who are far along the spectrum already dealing with disease and bloody stool and ulcers in their colon. It's a shocking stat, but it tells us if 5% of the globe has 50% of these diseases, 70% of that population is early stage. It can't possibly be genetic. It can't possibly just be autoimmune. And it sure as hell better not be autoimmune or unknown cause. And if it is, you better figure it out pretty fast because you got a sick population of people who are dying.
So what's your opinion of what is that cause?
Oh my goodness.
I'm asking leading questions, but
so leading. Yes. I think you already know the answer. So let's dive into that. Number one, antibiotic usage is up, 40, 50% or something in the last couple of years, the last 20 years or so. We've got pesticide usage. Again, stats from 1990, there was 800 different pesticides approved. Now it's almost like 17,000 or 18,000 different pesticides. So we've gone up about 19 times our usage, the variety we use, 2 to 4 times the tonnage. We pour almost 1 billion pounds a year on our food. Not only that, but we have 50% more toxic pesticides allotted in the United States for usage, known to cause cancers and kidney disease and DNA and genetic damage than, say, the European Union allows. 50% more dangerous toxic chemicals. On top of that, chronic stress, the standard American diet, alcohol consumption, sugar consumption. The average American consumes 101 pounds of sugar per year. That's a 10th grader. You know what I mean? Like that's a whole human being in sugar every year. From our lattes to our junk to the additives, it's in salad dressings, it's in everywhere. And so all these things cumulatively take their toll. There's food dye and food coloring. You say, well, it's just food dye, prove it. Well, why not just remove it and see what happens? Why not remove the junk to see what happens? These diseases and autoimmune disease and gut disease has been on the rise in the last 50 to 70 years since the introduction of these things. And as they start to get into the food, we'll call it the gene pool of our food and dietary system, it's compounding. Instead of just a fast food burger, well, now it's in your drinks. Now it's in your health bars, your Cliff bars full of corn syrups and other junk. It's in everywhere. And so one dose of corn syrup won't hurt you, but getting it 6 different times a day from 7 different sources, you're going to have a problem. And this is where things start to compound. And this is what I believe is driving this disease epidemic.
So what's the solution? What can someone who thinks they have these problems do right now? What's a simple start? Best
place to do, knock on the door of Elon Musk and see if he's got a ticket to Mars left available. That's where I go. Can we just get off this
Until
planet?
we ruin that planet too.
Yes, we'll destroy everything. And, it's a really interesting question to ask because the reality is it's awareness and education and it's choice. I talk to so many people. This is what I do for a living. I reverse Crohn's and colitis for a living. Unquestioned, we're phenomenal. We've done 250 cases the last 2 years, and I still have people going, no, you're wrong, or no, I don't have to remove that from my diet. And so it's number one, being coachable. Number two, educate yourself. We have to learn because with education comes knowledge. But like the great Ben Parker said, with great power comes great responsibility. And so once we have the knowledge and the information, we then have to make choices to do with it, right? Even if we don't like it, even if it's inconvenient, even if it means we have to give up this drink or that snack, but we give up bread, God forbid, that's a horrible thing for most people to give up. But that's where it starts. It's educating yourself and making the hard choices with the end goal in mind that I want to get better. Once you open that door and accept that step, these stages of possibility, only then can you start to implement the tools successfully that you need to finally heal.
So why is it that 99% of doctors think that Crohn's and colitis, and we'll just throw other autoimmune diseases in there too, why do they think that they're not reversible and that only medication can stunt it or whatever you want to call it?
No, it's a great question. And it's unfortunately what they're taught. And I can go down the whole rabbit hole of the pharmaceutical industries and the multi-trillion-dollar industry of sickness and all that. That's another topic altogether. But the idea is doctors, even those most well-meaning, are taught one thing. But not only that, they're required to toe the line if they want to be employed, they want to make their money, they want to be reimbursed by insurance. It's an insurance profit-driven model. So even those who want to learn, they're out on their own, they're fish out of water. I work with doctors. I lecture at Priority Health Academy a couple times a year about inflammatory bowel disease. And it's an online academy for doctors who have left the traditional Western world, went out on their own and said, this isn't working. I'm actually harming my patients. I want to do something better. And they're coming to learn functional medicine. So we teach them these techniques. And it's a really great academy. And my specialty being IBD is what I get to train and teach. And they have no idea how this stuff works. Even the breakdown process, they're taught about the pathology. They're taught about what happens in IBD, like how bad is the disease, how do I identify it? But they're not taught about roots. They're not taught about root causes and reversal. They're taught that autoimmunity just is what it is. Your body is attacking you and nobody knows why. God plays favorites. Who knows what it is? But we even know there's an autoimmune spectrum. And most cases I dealing with IBD are not actually autoimmune, but they're classified based on diagnostic criteria to be autoimmune. But they rarely even check antibodies. They simply go, okay, we've done a colonoscopy. You've got the blood, you've got the ulcers, you've got the inflammation. Okay, you've got the symptoms. We've done some blood labs and your inflammatory markers are elevated. That's all we need. We're good enough. You've got inflammatory bowel disease, which is autoimmune, genetic, unknown. But they're not actually checking to see if your case is autoimmune. Most of what we see is not autoimmune. 80 to 90% of the cases we see are on the spectrum of inflammation. But I look at it like 4 rungs in a ladder, and this is where doctors don't see it. They're taught, number one, it's this box, therefore it's this disease. If you're not inside that box, we don't know what it is, there's nothing we can do. Here's an antidepressant. I see that all the time. We have to look at 4 rungs of the ladder. So number one, you're healthy, right? The left side of this rung, you're very healthy. We go down the end of that rung, now you've got IBS, you're inflamed. Well, if that keeps getting more severe, we climb up a level. Your gut's getting worse. So now you have IBS, which rubs and wears and tears, either quickly or over many years, until you now have Crohn's colitis. So now you've got severe inflammation, like your foot is in the shoe, it's blistering now. Well, we now have to climb up the next level. Now that you've got Crohn's colitis, I actually look at colitis as the beginning, Crohn's as the end, as it gets worse from one organ to multiple organs within the same system. But some people can kind of jump right to Crohn's. It happens. But then there's the next stage, or final stage, the autoimmune spectrum, the term actually coined by Dr. Amy Myers, where you have a low-grade autoimmune condition all the way to the severe end where you have a high-grade autoimmune condition. Let's take that one step further. Now you've got multiple autoimmune conditions stacking on top of each other, right? So it's layer after layer, but doctors, they only see one rung. You have this condition, therefore it's autoimmune, therefore there's nothing we can do. And that's what they're taught, and that's what they're forced to stick to. You give this drug, or you get sued, or you get out, or you don't have our financial support, whatever it is. And now you're acting in the interest of the institution rather than the patient.
Wow. So before we wrap up, if somebody wants to start taking their health into their own hands, what's their next step?
Easiest way, visit us at gutsolution.ca. Everything you need is there. That's gutsolution, all singular.ca for Canada, gutsolution.ca. We work all over the world, and you can find everything you need. Our social is there. The podcast is there. Everything we need. And I know you mentioned, Shoshana, you're going to put everything in the show notes as well. We recently launched our school community, which is a course community that actually looks and feels just like a Facebook group. You can go in and you can comment and engage and work with people. And we have courses inside as well. What is IBD? How did you get it? What's going on with you in your process? How can we reverse that process and go from there? And so it's a really fully in-depth, fully immersive, DIY, everyone can do it type of process. And we're doing live coaching calls in there. So we get to hold your hand through the process as well. So there's many different ways to get a hold of us, but everything can be found at gutsolution.ca.
Amazing. And we're going to link to that in our show notes, as well as a special link for our Plant Trainers listeners will be there if you'd like. And I think that everybody needs to re-listen to this and find one little thing, because we talked about a lot of different lifestyle things that got thrown in there, and find one little thing that you could start making a difference with today, including taking your health into your own hands. I think that's absolutely huge.
Definitely. Yeah. Josh, thank you so much for sharing with us all this great information. I think a lot of our listeners are really going to benefit and get some help that they might need. Appreciate you being on the Plant Trainers podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I hope above all else, it just gives people hope and a new lens to look through to realize that they can take this into their own hands and more can be done. So thank you for just giving us a platform to get this information to the world.
Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers podcast. We want to make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform.
We really appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it really helps other people find us just like you did.
Thanks so much to our patrons. To become a patron, visit us at patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference in the quality of the show.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @planttrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at planttrainers.com for awesome recipes, a list of our services, and of course, our latest podcast.
We encourage you to email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so that we can help you improve your quality of life through nutrition and fitness.
So we hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time
and have a healthy day.
Or is that too corny?
It's a little cheesy.